First of all, let me just say how encouraged I am that that the buzz and the direction for this movement continues to grow. I'm watching the evidence beyond polls is seen at the grassroots in rooms like this. It's happening on Facebook. It's happening all over social media, and it is much larger than any individual, any particular candidate or cause. And one of the encouraging things is that after you finish a race for governor and you're in 67 counties, and literally Sam spoke to 40,000 people in person at town hall meetings that were lined up, some of you were there, around the buildings, at little firehouses and township sheds. The energy for ideas, people didn't leave those town halls saying, boy, I just love Sam Rohr. They said, I love Sam Rohr's principles. It didn't come out with a sense when you leave a Ron Paul meeting or whatever, or Mike Fulmer or John Eichelberger, some of the statesmen we have in Pennsylvania, that we're excited about these people because they are self-generating, self-perpetuating celebrities. The reason that we're excited about this new crop of candidates is because of their principles. I had the privilege of running and winning a seat in the state legislature in 2000 from a district that was heavily Democrat. Never voted for a Republican. I was a Republican, 67% Democrat at the time. And it wasn't because I had an ethnic name that worked in southwestern Pennsylvania. My mother is Filipino, my father very Caucasian, and we're not from southwestern Pennsylvania. It wasn't because my family was wealthy, but because, and many of you have experienced this in door-to-door conversations, when you talk to people about lower taxes and limited government and personal responsibility, and in my case, issues like the Second Amendment and the right to life are important to me, that really not only resonates, but it's refreshing, because most of what comes through the political filter is not authentic. Most of what comes, and you're seeing some of our fine candidates win primaries around the country, and as soon as the national firms come in, clean up the website, scrub down Facebook, erase the Twitter posts, and try to recreate and reconstitute a campaign, there's very little authentic about those candidates because they're speaking to the polls. So you have commercials that begin with, I'm not a witch, and not, here's what I stand for, and here are my principles. I don't want to leave you today with, in the brief time that I'm going to be here, with a 1, 2, 3, how to win an election or how to start a campaign. The prescription for that is fairly simple. It is the Department of State website. If you're running federally, there are compendiums that can walk you through 1, 2, 3, what you have to do for filings and such to be legal and on the ballot. Despite the hurdles with ballot access, it's still possible, if you have the time, the inclination, and a whole lot of friends, to get on the ballot. But that's not why I'm here today. The purpose for me being here is to give you just a few of, I hope, practical principles and lessons from a few dozen campaigns, many of them successful, many of them against incumbents. The majority of our work at Churchill Strategies now involves branding, policy ideas. So we work with organizations like Commonwealth Foundation, like Pennsylvania Family Institute, like Mississippi Policy Institute, or Platt Institute in Nebraska, or Texas. All of these issues, interestingly, in most of our states, whether it's 10th Amendment or reforming the legal system, lawsuit abuse, medical liability, spending caps, lower taxes, all of these ideas are pretty much the same. It's the emphasis that you put on them, the brand that is different in Montana than it would be in Philadelphia. So the work that we do at Churchill is primarily focused on branding ideas. We do, from time to time, get involved in a campaign that we believe, not based on polling data, not based on personal charisma, but based on the integrity of the candidate, deserves to have professional representation. So our team gets behind that, and I was really privileged to be with Sam for the 6-month duration of a very short campaign, a very quick ramp up, and dollar for dollar, When you look at the analysis of that race and the huge numbers of voters that ended up casting a ballot for a principal candidate over really at that point an undefined campaign, and then you look at the result now on paper, the Republican nominee really checking all of the boxes off. So at least on paper now, you have a candidate that is acceptable on paper, and it's going to be up to voters to decide whether or not it's authentic or it's a real conversion, or like many cases, you're going to have to be vigilant every day through every executive order, through every action from the governor's mansion. And I suggest from the very first words on the inaugural address till the very last from the farewell address, you're going to have to be vigilant, as you do with every politician. First point, and this is something that I think is the tragedy of the political process and the political system. And I look, and I've had the privilege of just meeting thousands and thousands of activists around the state. A couple things that I look for in political candidates before they run for office, because if this issue is not checked before they are on the ballot, this will destroy the campaign or it will destroy the elected official. Number one ingredient to a successful campaign, now not cosmetically, but in fact, is to have a strong family. And this is so underscored in the world of activism, because we look at a couple things. What is your name ID? How much money do you have in the bank, or how much money do you think you can raise? I'm looking more at the stability. I know that with social media, I know with enough gross ratings points, if you win the primary, Republican National Committee comes in, or national organizations can come in, you can easily paper over all of the cracks in the veneer of a political candidate. But let me tell you, if you do not have, as Sam did, as Mike Fulmer does, and John Eichelberg and others, an intact, stable family that is on your side, not just a trophy wife for men that stands behind and just nods in a placid, agreeable way, and honey, the photographer's coming today, let's just smile, let's put it all together, stitch it together. Of the 253 people that I worked with in the Pennsylvania House, I could say 10 or under had authentic marriages. The rest were agreements. People automatically go to the Clintons, or they automatically go to the Obamas, and well, that's not real. Some of them, in some cases, they have brokered over years an agreement. I'm going to let you do this, I'm going to work your law, I'm going to let you do 24 hours a day in activism and running for office, and on the 8th campaign, maybe you'll win, but I'm going to stay here. And for the candidate, the mark of a good wife or a good husband is standing by your man. I say that the relationship for a family is critical because it is the number one accountability mechanism that keeps you grounded. When you walk into the halls of Congress or the Pennsylvania House, or let's say one of you makes it to the White House or the governor's mansion or somebody that you know that you've campaigned with along the way, there's something that happens, something that you breathe in, and suddenly your bag is taken from you. You know, I had, when I was elected, I went from college, from waiting tables. My dad was a pastor of a little church in southwestern Pennsylvania, so there was, it was what I made, and so my first real job out of college was in the state legislature. First day in, salary starts a month before you actually take office. 4 district offices, a large staff, 15 or so interns, and a Harrisburg office. Remember, I was in a Democratic seat, so I got a lot of resources. And then you're not, so a guy comes in the morning and cleans the glass at your desk, and your secretary comes in and makes sure your coffee and your newspapers are laid out. I'm not saying that those seductions of power are impossible to navigate. I'm simply saying that if you do not have a plan, you will find out you're going to be on the floor of the House or the Senate or Congress calling your spouse home saying, honey, I've got to stay here because, and you fill in the lie, because we're negotiating the budget, or we're coming to an agreement, or I've got to go to this political fundraiser. If you sacrifice your family for the job, and you go to think about all of the people that have gone through politics and made it, I'm not saying you have to be a perfect person. I'm saying, though, that if you do not have your house in order before you run, the planks will come undone and it will spill out in public, it will spill out in private, your staff will not be able to keep a lid on it, and you will not get reelected. It is principled and it's practical. And I'd point to a handful of people like Sam Rohr that long before they considered running for office, long before they got the whiff of political power, made a decision to put their family first, to say, no, you know, we're not going to campaign 7 days a week. No, I'm not going to do a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout ceremony. I'm not. Make all the decisions first about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do from a principled standpoint before you are elected. Because as Mike Fulmer will tell you, going from tire salesman to the legislature with staff, making decisions when even the good people are telling you, it's okay, this isn't a tax increase, this is a revenue enhancement, or no, you need to be at that fundraiser for the Senate campaign committee because, no, they weren't there with you last time, but they'll be with you. Or you have to endorse Arlen Specter because Arlen Specter, well, and I know what he said in the primary. See, all of these miniature compromises add up to a major crisis of character. So if you do not begin with a family as a basis, you are going to fail miserably politically. Number two, do not trade an ounce of your reputation or your political principles for the cost of a vote. Now, well, that's easy. I'm pro-life.